In the quiet suburbs of Perris, California, a family lived behind closed doors, hidden from the world's scrutiny. But what unfolded within those walls would shock the nation and shed light on a dark reality that few could fathom. This is the story of the Turpin family, a tale of secrecy, abuse, and the resilience of the human spirit. David and Louise Turpin seemed like an ordinary couple, raising their 13 children in a seemingly typical suburban home. However, behind the facade of normalcy lay a horrifying truth. A truth that would come to light in a moment of courage and desperation. David Allen Turpin, born to Betty and James Turpin on October 17, 1961, in Princeton, West Virginia, hailed from a devoutly religious family and experienced a typical upbringing. During his time at Princeton High School, he actively participated in various extracurricular activities such as the Bible Club, Chess Club, Science Club, and a cappella chorus. Following his high school graduation, David enrolled in Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia, where he pursued a degree in electrical engineering. Renowned for his brilliance in computer engineering, he later secured positions at prestigious defense technology companies like Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin. In contrast, Louise Anna Turpin entered the world on May 24, 1968, in Princeton, West Virginia, as the eldest among 6 siblings born to Phyllis and Wayne Robinette. Wayne, a preacher, and Phyllis, who also worked as a Walmart cashier while singing in the church choir, provided the backdrop for Louise's upbringing. The childhood of the Robinette children was extremely distressing. Wayne and Phyllis frequently disagreed, leading to a harsh treatment of their children. From a young age, Louise, her sisters, and her mother endured sexual abuse from a family member. Teresa, Louise's sister, revealed that this traumatic experience was a significant, unspoken secret within the family. Elizabeth, Louise's younger sister, later revealed to People magazine that Louise fiercely shielded her younger siblings. She described Louise as gentle, compassionate, and nurturing, striving to comfort them amidst their parents' intense conflicts and shield them from their predatory relative. When Louise was 15 years old, she encountered David Turpin, 22, at church, sparking a romantic connection between them. Fearful of how Louise's parents would react, they chose to keep their relationship clandestine. Upon discovering the truth, Phyllis, Louise's mother, eventually accepted their bond, influenced by David's upbringing in a devout Christian family and Louise's assurances. However, they opted to conceal their relationship from Wayne, Louise's father, aware of the potential fury it would provoke from him. In January 1985, David, aged 23, visited Princeton High School, his alma mater from 5 years prior, where Louise was currently enrolled. Through persuasion, he convinced the school staff to allow him to remove Louise from class. Willingly, Louise accompanied David out of school, embarking on a journey southward with plans to elope. Upon realizing Louise's absence, her parents notified the authorities. Before authorities could intercept them, the couple had already reached Texas, intending to marry in secret. Surprisingly, they acquiesced to returning to West Virginia without resistance. Upon their return, the couple anticipated Wayne and Phyllis's wrath, yet were met with surprising calmness. Initially, Wayne directed his anger towards Phyllis for permitting their daughter's relationship with David. However, he eventually recognized the challenge of separating two deeply in love. Consequently, Wayne consented to their marriage, which took place in a modest ceremony in Pearisburg, Virginia, on February 11, 1985. 2 years later, Wayne and Phyllis parted ways, with Wayne assuming the role of Chief Deputy Assessor for Mercer County. Following their marriage, Louise began to distance herself from her family. Freed from her parents' strictures, she eagerly embraced a life of autonomy and happiness. In 1988, Louise welcomed their first child, a daughter, followed by another addition 18 months later in 1990. Subsequently, David's job transfer with General Dynamics prompted the family's relocation to Fort Worth, Texas, settling in the modern neighborhood of Meadow Creek. With David's lucrative income, the Turpin family enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. Eager to showcase her newfound prosperity, Louise extended an invitation to her family from West Virginia to visit. Having grown up without financial abundance, Louise seized the opportunity to exhibit her current success. David and Louise generously covered the expenses, including travel and accommodations, for their family's visit. In 1991, the Turpin family welcomed another addition, a son, further enriching their lives. By 1992, despite David's substantial six-figure earnings, the Turpin family found themselves deeply entrenched in debt. However, this financial strain didn't hinder their extravagant lifestyle or deter them from expanding their family. In 1993, Louise discovered she was expecting their third child, a girl. As was customary, Louise's family visited the Turpin household annually, unaware of the financial difficulties looming over them. Determined to maintain appearances, Louise assumed all financial responsibilities for her family's visit, shielding them from the harsh reality of their financial woes. In 1994, the eldest daughter of the Turpin family embarked on her first-grade journey at Meadow Creek Elementary, presenting herself with greasy and disheveled hair, soiled attire, and a noticeable lack of regular hygiene. These visible indicators hinted at the neglectful treatment she received from her parents. Unfortunately, her appearance subjected her to ridicule from peers who taunted her for her uncleanliness. In 1995, the Turpin family welcomed another addition, a son. The subsequent year, the family of 6 embarked on a vacation to visit Louise's family. Despite their precarious financial situation, the Turpin family appeared unconcerned and continued to spend lavishly, treating their relatives to expensive dining experiences. In 1996, Louise's sister, Elizabeth, accompanied the Turpin family back to Fort Worth for the summer holidays. During their return journey, the family made a stop at a casino in Louisiana. Louise entrusted Elizabeth with the care of the children, while she and David indulged in gambling, urging her to keep their activities secret. Elizabeth was taken aback by Louise's behavior, as their Christian upbringing had instilled in them the belief that gambling was morally wrong. Unfortunately, their gambling venture resulted in losses, sparking a heated argument between David and Louise. David accused Louise of having a gambling problem and blamed her for their financial setback. While staying at the Turpin household, Elizabeth was startled to discover the family's unsettling dynamics. David and Louise displayed a distinct lack of affection towards their children, and strict control permeated every aspect of the children's lives. Even basic activities like using the bathroom or having a meal required permission from the Turpin couple. Additionally, Elizabeth found David's behavior particularly disturbing, as he would intrude on her privacy by entering the bathroom and watching her while she showered, a habit that left her feeling uneasy and uncomfortable. In May 1997, the Turpin family welcomed their 5th child. By September of the same year, concerns regarding the hygiene of the eldest daughter escalated, coupled with troubling indications that suggested possible instances of sexual abuse. Consequently, she was brought to the principal's office to discuss her home life, though no subsequent action was taken to address the matter. In 1998, the family expanded once again with the arrival of their 6th child. Despite David's lucrative job, the family's finances continued to deteriorate due to their regular gambling habits, leading to significant financial strain. In the spring of 1999, the eldest daughter ceased attending school, followed by the other children, as Louise and David claimed they were being homeschooled. By late 1998, the Fort Worth home was foreclosed upon by the bank, prompting the Turpin family to relocate to Rio Vista, Texas, a less populated area. However, their new residence was maintained in a deplorable state, which undoubtedly disgusted the new owners upon moving in. The house was marred by dirt, stains, and emitted a foul odor, leading the new occupants to suspect the presence of excrement. Before moving to the Rio Vista house, the Turpin family welcomed their 7th child. Between 2001 and 2007, the Turpin family expanded their household with the addition of 5 more children. As neglect escalated, the Turpin parents resorted to physical abuse, including slapping, choking, and whipping their children with belts, often for trivial reasons, such as not seeking permission to use the restroom. Shockingly, the children were permitted to bathe only once a year. Despite purchasing appetizing food, David and Louise cruelly denied their children access to it, and forcing them to endure starvation while taunting them with the sight of the untouched meals. Instead, the children were fed inexpensive frozen food, resulting in severe malnutrition, evidenced by stunted growth, pallid complexions, and a youthful appearance disproportionate to their actual ages. The lack of socialization and psychological abuse further hindered their cognitive development. In 2004, the Turpin family relocated to an upscale trailer, abandoning the Rio Vista house due to its deplorable condition, characterized by accumulated garbage and deceased rodents, rendering it uninhabitable. In 2008, during a conversation with her sister Teresa, 40-year-old Louise divulged startling revelations that left Teresa utterly shocked. Louise confessed that she and David no longer attended church, a stark departure from their upbringing in devout Christian households. Instead, the Turpin couple had turned their focus towards Satanism and engaged in activities involving Ouija boards. Louise went on to disclose their participation in swinging, a lifestyle involving extramarital sexual encounters with other couples. Shockingly, they would leave their younger children at home under the supervision of the older ones while they met strangers they had encountered online for these encounters. It became apparent that Louise was the primary participant in these activities, with David supporting her endeavors by providing transportation and waiting for her during these encounters. Teresa was deeply troubled by the drastic transformation of her once caring and responsible sister into someone unrecognizable. The Turpin family relocated to Murrieta, where they made frequent visits to Disneyland, capturing countless joyful family moments dressed in matching attire. Louise ensured these pictures were sent to her family, with whom she had ceased communication via Skype and restricted access to the children. These photos served as the sole reassurance to Louise's family that the children were seemingly in good spirits, despite appearing thin. It became apparent that the Turpin couple harbored an obsession with Disneyland, evident in their repeated visits, and the emphasis placed on documenting these experiences through photographs. In 2014, the Turpin family made a move to Perris, California, situated approximately 20 miles north of Marietta. By this point, the abuse inflicted upon the children had escalated to extreme levels of violence. David and Louise resorted to restraining the children to their beds using ropes, and if any escape attempt was made, they would replace the ropes with chains and padlocks. The children endured confinement within their room for approximately 20 hours each day, subjected to the oppressive stench that permeated the air. In 2015, the family welcomed their 13th and final edition. Shortly thereafter, the entire family embarked on a trip to Las Vegas to commemorate the 30th wedding anniversary of David and Louise. The couple opted to renew their vows at the Elvis Chapel, marking the occasion with a celebration that starkly contrasted with the reality of their abusive treatment towards their children. Faced with the relentless horrors of her situation, the 17-year-old girl made a courageous decision to seek help by reporting the abuse to the authorities. In a daring act, she escaped through a window and swiftly contacted the police using her phone. During the harrowing 20-minute call to 911, she recounted in detail the appalling living conditions and the myriad abuses endured by her and her siblings. Equipped with photographic evidence of their dire circumstances, she awaited the arrival of law enforcement. When the police reached the scene, they were confronted with a frail and emaciated figure, resembling a child no more than 10 years old. Presenting the damning photos of the house's interior, the girl guided the police to the front door, where a bewildered Louise stood, unaware of the impending revelation of the family's dark secrets. As soon as the police stepped into the house, they were assaulted by a foul and nauseating odor that made it nearly impossible to breathe through their noses. Despite the overwhelming stench, they pressed forward and made a shocking discovery. 3 of the younger children were shackled to their beds. The entire house was engulfed in filth and littered with garbage, with the children deprived of access to basic necessities such as restroom facilities. Acting swiftly, the police escorted the younger children to the Riverside University Medical Center, while the adult children were taken to the Corona Regional Medical Center for evaluation and care. On January 14, 2018, authorities apprehended David and Louise Turpin on suspicion of committing acts of child abuse and torture. Just 4 days later, the couple faced a litany of charges, with each of them being accused of 12 counts of torture, 7 counts of abusing a dependent adult, 6 counts of child abuse and neglect, and 12 counts of false imprisonment. Additionally, David Turpin faced an additional charge of engaging in a lewd act with a child under the age of 14. Among the children, the 2-year-old stood out as the sole one without any visible signs of abuse or torture. In addition to the mentioned abuses, the Turpin couple subjected the children to further cruelty, such as throwing them downstairs, resulting in nerve damage from prolonged physical mistreatment. Additionally, the children lacked fundamental life knowledge, including basic understanding of medicine. Despite purchasing toys, the Turpin couple prohibited the children from playing with them. Furthermore, the children were forced to stay awake until the early hours of the morning, typically until 4 or 5 a.m., and were not permitted to go to bed before then. On January 24, 2018, the judge imposed a restriction on David and Louise, preventing them from interacting with the children for 3 years, with communication allowed only through their legal representation. Subsequently, on June 21, 2018, the evidence presented was deemed substantial enough to warrant a trial for the Turpin couple. Finally, on February 22, 2019, David and Louise altered their pleas, both pleading guilty to a total of 14 charges, including torture, abuse of a dependent adult, false imprisonment, and child endangerment. During the court proceedings, the parents had a heartfelt reunion with their children. Based on the children's statements, it appeared that all of them had forgiven their parents and harbored feelings of love towards them. Each individual expressed their desire for their parents' well-being and conveyed that they were thriving in their respective lives. David and Louise, visibly emotional, offered sincere apologies for their past actions and expressed their deep love for their children, wishing them success in life. Subsequently, the Turpin couple received a sentence of life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As of March 2022, Louise, aged 53, is eligible for parole in 2037, while David, aged 60, is also eligible for parole in the same year. The revelations of abuse and neglect within the Turpin household sent shockwaves through the community and beyond, leaving us questioning how such horrors could have remained hidden for so long. In the aftermath, the community rallied together to support the survivors, offering them hope and healing as they embarked on the long road to recovery. The Turpin family story serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the responsibility we all bear to protect the most vulnerable among us. Beneath the turquoise waters of the Great Barrier Reef, a romantic tale took an unforeseen turn, leaving behind a mystery that has fascinated and haunted many. This is the story of Tina Watson, a journey that started with love and adventure but ended in tragedy and unanswered questions. Tina, a young and adventurous woman, embarked on a life-changing journey when she met her future husband, Gabe Watson. Their love story unfolded against the backdrop of the stunning Australian coastline, promising a lifetime of shared adventures. Tina Watson was born in West Germany on February 13, 1977, and placed for adoption. On January 24, 1980, she was officially adopted by Tommy and Cindy Thomas. Growing up with her younger sister, the family initially resided in Walker County, Alabama, before moving to Birmingham and eventually settling in Louisiana in 1990. Described as a bright and joyful individual, Tina's presence was said to light up the lives of those around her. During her childhood, Tina was diagnosed with paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, PSVT, a condition marked by an abnormally fast heart rhythm, leading to symptoms like shortness of breath, lightheadedness, sweating, and palpitations. The prescribed medications provided limited relief and instead sapped her energy. At the age of 24, Tina underwent a minor procedure to address her PSVT. She pursued her education at the University of Alabama at Birmingham and, during that time, became engaged to Scott McCulloch. Unfortunately, their engagement was called off due to disapproval from Tina's mother. Later, Tina entered into a relationship with Gabe Watson. Born on March 5, 1977, David Gabe Watson, commonly known as Gabe, was recognized for his amiable and affable nature, easily forging connections with everyone he encountered. Smitten by Tina, they began their relationship shortly after meeting at a New Year's Eve celebration, despite Tina initially rebuffing his numerous attempts to ask her out. Following their graduation from the University of Alabama, Tina pursued a managerial role in a clothing store, while Gabe joined his father's company. Gabe, purportedly a qualified certified rescue diver, harbored a keen interest in scuba diving and engaged in the activity frequently. In contrast, Tina did not share the same enthusiasm for scuba diving. In January 2003, Tina initiated scuba diving lessons to share in Gabe's passion for the activity. Concerns arose among Tina's parents due to her previous heart condition, PSVT. Tommy, Tina's father, approached Gabe, expressing his worry about Tina's health. However, Gabe dismissed the concerns, asserting that both partners should engage in activities the other loved. Despite Tommy's uncertainty when Gabe inquired about authorizing their marriage, Gabe remained unperturbed. Gabe playfully teased Tina with a wedding ring but never formally proposed, citing a need for the right timing. On April 20th, 2003, during an Easter egg hunt at their home, Gabe concealed an engagement ring within an egg and proposed to Tina after she discovered it. This gesture left Tina's parents displeased, viewing Gabe as someone who acted without considering others' opinions, and his desires always took precedence without scrutiny. On September 26, 2003, Tina approached her father, expressing the need to increase her life insurance and designate Gabe as the sole beneficiary. Skeptical and uncertain about the urgency, Tina's father hesitated and brushed off the matter until their return from the honeymoon. On October 11, 2003, Tina and Gabe exchanged vows of marriage. Immediately after their wedding, they embarked on their honeymoon the following day, heading to Australia for a 2-week getaway. During the initial week, they explored Sydney, and in the second week, they ventured to Townsville, Queensland. While in Townsville, they boarded the Spoilsport cruise ship, engaging in 25 scuba dives across various reef sites. Despite Tina's limited experience with only 5 dives compared to Gabe's 55, she felt secure due to Gabe's training as a rescue diver. As the couple prepared for a more challenging dive, Gabe declined the option of bringing a professional diver along, insisting on his certification and asserting his competence. However, concerns arose when Gabe encountered issues with his dive computer, causing unease for Tina. The dive computer was designed to track the duration and depth of dives, providing an estimate of the safe time to stay underwater before resurfacing. The particular dive they undertook was considered challenging due to its depth and the ocean's strong currents. With limited assistance available on the boat in case of emergencies, Gabe, before the dive, requested additional weight for Tina to enable her to descend further. Once Tina received the added weight, they began their descent. However, within a few minutes underwater, Gabe observed Tina displaying signs of concern and struggling to signal that something was amiss. According to Gabe, Tina accidentally dislodged his breathing mask, inducing a moment of panic. While fixing his mask, Gabe became distracted and, upon resolving the issue, observed Tina sinking towards the ocean floor. Despite being purportedly a certified rescue diver, Gabe, akin to lifeguards, swam to the surface and headed to the boat for assistance. Meanwhile, an underwater instructor named Wade, who was also submerged, noticed Tina's predicament, intervened, and brought her to the surface. Wade then transported Tina to another boat named Jazz 2, where he administered CPR for over half an hour. When questioned about his decision to leave Tina underwater, Gabe cited his lack of knowledge on how to bring someone back to the surface as his rationale. Without checking on Tina's well-being or whereabouts, Gabe returned to the original boat instead. Observers on the boat noted Gabe's peculiar behavior, expressing concern about his lack of apparent distress and his unusual requests for hugs from everyone. When assistance finally arrived, Tina was transported to the hospital. At the hospital, medical personnel found it unusual that Tina had very little water in her lungs, considering the circumstances where one would typically expect more water inhalation. Wade, the underwater instructor, also found it strange that Tina had sunk as scuba divers, unless weighted, are naturally buoyant and do not typically sink. When Wade swam to rescue Tina, he observed that she was wearing all her weights, prompting him to release her weight belt to expedite her ascent to the surface. During the subsequent investigation, detectives uncovered that Tina had been carrying 20 pounds of weight when only 8 pounds were necessary. Tragically, despite the efforts, Tina could not be saved and passed away at the hospital. Several divers who participated in the same dive asserted that they witnessed Gabe giving Tina a bear hug underwater while she was struggling. One of the divers took a photograph of his wife, and upon developing the photos, they realized that Tina was seen in the background at the bottom of the ocean, lying face up. During the questioning by detectives, Gabe's account was inconsistent, and there were contradictions in his narrative about how Tina sank. Gabe chose to communicate the details to his parents over the phone. Surprisingly, he declined to engage in a conversation with Tina's parents and instructed his parents to relay the information to them. The coroner concluded that Tina's cause of death was drowning, ruling it as an accidental occurrence without any signs of foul play. Tina's father was left in utter disbelief at these findings. Gabe, together with Tina's body, were flown back to the United States 5 days afterward. The funeral, attended by various family members and friends, witnessed a unanimous sentiment among them that Gabe's behavior was inappropriate. Whilst standing in front of the open casket, Gabe turned to his friend and said, "At least her breast looked perky." In adherence to the routine, Gabe later that year sent Tina's family a Christmas card featuring a picture of both of them from their wedding. On the card, Gabe penned his thoughts, "Who's that sexy guy next to Tina? Oh yeah, that's me." After the situation stabilized, Gabe attempted to file a claim against the travel agency for the disrupted trip. However, the insurance company notified him that neither Tina's life insurance nor the injuries sustained during scuba diving were covered by the insurance policy. Despite not believing a word of the account, Tina's father, Tommy, sensed the need to delve deeper into the situation. Several individuals from Spoilsport ship approached Tommy to assist him in uncovering the truth about his daughter. Following a conversation with one of the ship's crew members, he discovered that Gabe was not present on the ship during Tina's resuscitation. Motivated by this revelation, Tommy resolved to fly to Australia and conduct his investigation. Upon arriving in Australia, the initial individual Tommy engaged with was the diver responsible for bringing Tina to the surface of the ocean. Following discussions with the police and a meticulous examination of the case, the Townsville police concurred that there was substantial evidence indicating the possibility of foul play. In July 2004, a determination was made to classify the case not as an accident, but as a criminal investigation. The police highlighted numerous discrepancies in Gabe's narrative and the evidence presented. Contrary to Gabe's account, Tina's body was not located where he claimed it to be. Gabe asserted encountering 2 divers on his way to the surface, urging them to assist Tina, yet police discovered no supporting evidence of these alleged encounters. 2 other divers who were observing from a distance refuted Gabe's claim, asserting that there was no one in the vicinity of Gabe and Tina. Gabe's assertion that he rapidly ascended to assist Tina contradicted his dive computer data, which indicated a more deliberate ascent. Examination of Tina's dive computer revealed multiple rapid resurfacing instances during their scuba dive, suggesting panic. Detectives deduced that Tina, uncomfortable with diving, needed extra support, a fact later confirmed by her scuba instructor in court, emphasizing her lack of experience. The minimal amount of water in Tina's lungs suggested she likely passed out during the dive, her mouth relaxing off the mouthpiece, allowing water entry. Suspicions arose that Gabe may have deliberately cut off Tina's air until she lost consciousness, then resumed before leaving her submerged, potentially explaining her struggles witnessed by others. This theory was contested by dive experts who deemed it nearly impossible for Tina to reach the surface before running out of air. Further investigation revealed Gabe's proficiency in ocean rescues, prompting inquiries into the diving company's practices. It was uncovered that Gabe had misrepresented his diving experience, marking only 15 ocean dives instead of accurately portraying his skills. The company, misled by Gabe's repeated claims of being a certified diver, failed to assign a trained diver to accompany them, neglecting to address Tina's underwater panic, a crucial detail omitted by Gabe in his communications with the company. Tommy also shared that whenever he visited Tina's grave, the flowers he left mysteriously vanished, leading him to suspect theft. Gabe, expressing a desire to relocate Tina's body to his plot, moved her grave without placing a headstone, leaving it unmarked for 3 years. Upon discovering the new location, Tommy continued leaving flowers, only to find them gone the next day, and sometimes within hours. Disturbed by this, Tommy reported the situation to the police, prompting them to set up a camera near the grave to identify the culprit. The footage ultimately captured Gabe taking the flowers, with his justification being Tina's purported dislike for plastic flowers. Meanwhile, Gabe entered into a relationship with another lady identified as Kim, whom he married in August 2008. Australian authorities flew to Alabama to delve deeper into the case, uncovering unsettling information about Gabe's true character. It was revealed that Tina and Gabe had previously broken up before their engagement due to frequent quarrels, and during their separation, Tina went on a date, eliciting Gabe's furious reaction. Gabe resorted to name-calling and harassment. Despite reconciling and Gabe proposing to Tina, the police speculated that a potential motive for Gabe's actions could be linked to a life insurance payout. In May 2009, Gabe was extradited to Australia to face trial after reaching an agreement to lower the charges from murder to manslaughter. During the trial, he was found guilty of manslaughter and initially sentenced to 4.5 years. However, the judge opted to suspend the sentence to 12 months. The Alabama Attorney General contested the leniency of the sentence, filing an appeal that was approved, leading to an extension of the sentence to 18 months. Subsequently, the Alabama Attorney General sought to bring the case back to the United States for a retrial in Alabama, asserting the presence of additional evidence not presented during the Australian court proceedings. Australia insisted on a guarantee that Alabama would not pursue the death penalty before allowing any evidence from Australia to be transferred to the United States. Alabama agreed to the condition, leading to Gabe's return to the US, where he was taken into police custody for a retrial in Alabama. The Attorney General filed 2 charges, one for capital murder and another for kidnapping with deception. It was alleged that Gabe deceived Tina into taking diving lessons and traveling to Australia. Meanwhile, the Alabama courts removed Gabe as the administrator of Tina's estate, granting the role to Tina's father, Tommy. Despite Tommy's request for Tina's personal belongings, Gabe failed to return them. The trial commenced on February 13, 2012, coinciding with what would have been Tina's 35th birthday. However, peculiarly, the court in Alabama prohibited the mention of evidence about Gabe's unusual behavior and disallowed raising the life insurance claim. With this crucial evidence excluded, the judge determined insufficient grounds to convict Gabe of murder, resulting in his acquittal on all charges. Gabe claimed to be at peace with the verdict and expressed a desire to rebuild his life, but Tina's family was left without the closure they sought. Tina's untimely death cast a shadow over the dreams of a young couple in love, leaving her family and friends grappling with the pain of loss and the mystery surrounding that fateful day on the Great Barrier Reef. In the aftermath, the community came together to remember Tina, a vibrant spirit lost too soon, and to reflect on the fragility of life in the face of seemingly serene waters. The Tina Watson story is a somber reminder that even in the most beautiful places, tragedy can strike. May her memory inspire conversations about safety, transparency, and the pursuit of truth in the face of life's deepest mysteries. In the coastal charm of South Carolina, a story unfolded that would captivate the nation. The mysterious disappearance of Heather Rochelle Elvis. Nestled in the heart of Myrtle Beach, Heather's life was a blend of southern warmth and vibrant dreams, until an unexpected turn of events led to a puzzle that still echoes through the quiet seaside town. Heather, with her vivacious spirit and dreams of a brighter future, was a beloved daughter and sister. Her magnetic personality left an impression on everyone she met, but as the story unfolds, we'll discover that beneath the surface, some secrets and twists would shape the narrative of her life. Heather Rochelle Elvis was born on June 30, 1993, in Horry County, South Carolina, to Terry and Debbie Elvis. She was described as determined, the life of the party, free-spirited, and had a huge personality. She enjoyed doing makeup and wished to pursue it as a career. Heather was a talented, cheerful, and supposedly happy 20-year-old girl. She was very artistic and would frequently share her thoughts and interests on social media. Heather was known to be a bit rebellious as she lived her life the way that she wanted to and didn't waste any time caring about what other people thought about her. After graduating from St. James High School in Murrells Inlet in 2011, and eager to experience her independence, her parents allowed her to move into her apartment in Myrtle Beach with her best friend Brianna. To support herself while studying cosmetology, Heather had 2 part-time jobs, one at the House of Blues in North Myrtle Beach and the other at a Scottish-themed restaurant called the Tilted Kiln in Myrtle Beach. She had a good job, great friends, a tight-knit family, and everything in her life seemed to be on track. But like every 20-year-old girl, there were secrets and things that her family did not know about and would not find out about until it was too late. One day in the summer of 2013, Heather was working her usual shift at the Tilted Kiln when an older man caught her eye. This was the maintenance worker, Sidney Moorer. Sidney was a 37-year-old married man who had 3 children. His wife, Tammy, was a 40-year-old stay-at-home mother and a part-time travel agent whom he had been married to since 1997. Sidney had his own maintenance company and would come by to repair things in the restaurant's kitchen. It was no secret that Heather had a crush on Sydney, even though he was much older, and the two of them would engage in harmless flirting at work. Heather would tell her friend Brianna about what he said to her and what they did. She was completely smitten with this man. Heather, who was also very active on her social media accounts, was not shy in tweeting about her feelings towards Sydney. On June 12, 2013, she tweeted, "I got a taste for older men." On July 7th, 1 month later, she tweeted, "The guy who builds things at my job makes me want to cream myself." On the same day, she tweeted, "One of these days I'm going to drag that man into the mop closet and have my way with him." It soon became clear that Sydney was also attracted to Heather, and the two began an affair. Sydney would often bring Heather coffee and bagels when she was at work, even on his days off. They would text each other back and forth, and the relationship soon turned physical. At 7:12 p.m. on July 10th, Heather tweeted, "Baby did a bad thing." A minute later, she followed up with, "I'm in way too deep, but watch me get in deeper." Heather was head over heels in love with Sydney. She told her sister how much they loved each other and how they saw a future together. Throughout the affair, Heather was aware that Sydney had a wife. However, Sydney had told her that he was in an open marriage and was no longer in love with Tammy. He even claimed that Tammy had a boyfriend of her own, and they were only living together for financial reasons and the sake of the kids. Being young and naive, this was exactly what Heather had wanted to hear, and she believed every word. Her friends didn't approve of their relationship because he was 17 years older than Heather, and on top of that, Sydney was a married man. He had been married for 15 years, to his wife, 40-year-old Tammy. The affair was not a secret at Heather's workplace, and she would often be teased by her colleagues. The situation began to get out of hand, to the point where some colleagues wrote on a mirror at work, "Stop f***ing a married man, okay thanks." One of the girls also phoned the restaurant posing as Tammy looking for Heather. Heather panicked and left work straight away, thinking that Tammy was going to show up at any moment. Their affair lasted until September 2013, when Heather tweeted, "Once upon a time, an angel and a devil fell in love. It did not end well," referring to her relationship with Sydney. Tammy found out about the affair, and it's not clear how she found out, but she did, and people close to Heather said that once the affair had been discovered by Tammy, it was like all hell broke loose. Soon after discovering her husband's affair with the young waitress, Tammy phoned Heather saying, "You're going to end it with my husband." Tammy then put Sydney on the phone and listened, while Sydney began to tell Heather that she meant nothing to him, that it was over, and that she was just someone who spread their legs, amongst other insults. That greatly knocked Heather's confidence and self-worth. Over the next few weeks, she tried to focus on rebuilding herself and directing her sights on her goals and work. Tammy, however, was only just getting started. Tammy forced Sydney to get her name tattooed above his crotch and was overheard telling him, "Well, this wouldn't have happened if you didn't mess around with that girl." She would also handcuff him to the bed at night so that he could not sneak out. Over the next few weeks, Tammy continued to send nasty texts to Heather, and she even once called Heather 40 times in a single day. Heather believed that taunting Tammy was the best way to deal with the situation, saying things like, "Why are you texting me? You should be worried about your husband." Tammy would take it a step further and send Heather pictures of both Tammy and Sydney in bed together, getting intimate. Tammy continued to contact Heather asking, "Hey sweetie, ready to meet the missus?" Heather responded a couple of days later on November 1st saying, "I think you're a little obsessed with me. No need to worry about me anymore." On November 5th, Tammy responded, "By the way, Dad no longer owns a phone," referring to Sydney's lack of a phone, which prevented her from contacting him. Tammy also tried to get Heather fired from the Tilted Kilt, calling the restaurant every day and telling them that Sydney would no longer fix things as long as Heather was working there. It was also reported that Sydney texted Heather again, saying that Tammy wasn't entitled to feel the way she did about the affair and act the way she did because she too had a lover, but this turned out to be a lie. They both agreed to call it quits because nothing good was coming from it. Heather, on the other hand, told Sydney that she wanted Tammy to stop calling the restaurant because she lost hours of work and was sent home because Tammy kept calling. Heather and Sydney last saw each other on November 5th after they agreed to end their relationship. On Twitter, She retweeted a tweet by a comedian that you could say was a little personal. The tweet read, "Hey married fellas, you can either cheat on your wife or murder her. Never both, because that is when you get caught." Heartbroken, but remaining determined to move on from the situation, Heather continued to work on herself, with those close to her commenting on how she had got her smile back. Things also started to look up for Heather when she was offered a job in a beauty salon. She was one step closer to her dream job. As for the texts and calls from Tammy, Heather began to get used to them and continued to ignore them, thinking that Tammy would eventually get bored and move on. On November 19th, Sydney and Tammy decided to buy a brand new black Ford F-150 and drive to California with their children to visit Disneyland as a way to rekindle their romance, whereby the trip lasted 3 weeks. Meanwhile, despite Heather's life taking a turn for the better, it would not be long before those around her began to notice that she was gaining weight, so much so that she had to be given a new uniform at work as her usual one no longer fit. Heather went from having a size A cup size on her bra to a size C cup, and she also went from a medium-sized skirt to a large. These are all changes that are typically associated with someone pregnant, so finally Heather took a test at work one day, and it came back invalid. It is not known for certain whether or not Heather was pregnant, but it was considered a very strong possibility given the changes in her physical appearance and the fact that she was known to be having a very intimate relationship with Sydney Moorer. Her confidence was coming back, and she organized a date with a guy who was closer to her age that she'd been talking to for quite a while. Things were looking good for Heather. It was 17th of December 2013 when Heather headed out for her date. They hadn't planned anything specific and were eager to get to know one another a little better. They went out to eat and ended up driving around and looking at Christmas lights, as it was one of Heather's favorite things to do during the Christmas holidays, and then later her date, Stephen Schiraldi, took her to the Inlet Mall, where he taught her how to drive a stick shift in his truck. Her date had also snapped a picture of her as she tried out driving his car. Heather sent this picture of herself having fun on her date to her best friend Brianna, whom she lived with, and her dad, Terry. The date started around 10 p.m. and ended just after 1 a.m., with Heather being dropped off at her apartment with plans to meet her date again the next day for a second date. Unfortunately, this would be the final confirmed sighting of Heather Elvis. Just over half an hour later, after having arrived back at her apartment, Heather received a call from Sydney Moorer. This was completely unexpected, as the pair had not had contact in weeks. During the 4-minute phone call, which had been made from a payphone, Sydney apologized to Heather and expressed his love for her. He even confided in her that he had left Tammy in the hopes of being with her instead. At 1:44 a.m., Heather called her roommate Brianna, who was out of town visiting relatives, in tears. She told her that Sydney had phoned her to confess his love for her. Sydney would later deny this phone call ever took place until he was forced to admit it when the police had CCTV footage of him making a call at that same payphone at that time. Heather's roommate told her to think properly about it and not mess up all the great progress she had made in the past few weeks over him. Heather said that she would think about it, do some internet browsing, and then go to bed, but Heather could not sleep that night. At 2:29 a.m., Heather tried to call the number that Sydney had previously called several times, but received no answer. At 3:16 a.m., Heather tried to call Sydney's mobile phone, but again, received no answer. Refusing to give up, Heather called Sydney's mobile phone again. This time she got through, and the phone call lasted for just over 4 minutes. What was said during this phone call is unknown, but after the call, Heather got into her car and drove to a place called Peachtree Boat Landing, a place situated just 3 miles from Sydney and Tammy's home. Sydney also later denied that this phone call took place too, until he was forced to admit it after the police confronted him with Heather's phone record. He then said that he did talk to her, but only to tell her to leave him alone. At 3:38 a.m., Heather arrived at Peachtree Boat Landing. She again tried to call Sydney's phone, but she received no answer. She tried multiple times after to call again at 3:39 a.m., 3:41 a.m., and 3:46 a.m., but there was still no answer from Sydney. When Heather was trying to reach Sydney on his mobile, 2 CCTV cameras picked up a vehicle, a black Ford F-150, which was similar to that owned by Sydney and Tammy Moorer, coming from the direction of their house and headed towards Peachtree Boat Landing. The following evening, Heather's car, which was a green Dodge Intrepid, was found parked at Peachtree Landing on the Waccamaw River by a local policeman who was patrolling the area. After running the license plate and discovering that the car was registered to Heather's father, Terry Elvis, police went to her parents' house. The police questioned Heather's dad about the car, and Terry had a spare set of keys, so they went to the car, and they noticed that her keys, ID, purse, and phone were not inside. The police then allowed Terry to search the car and then let him drive it home. Terry tried calling her over and over again, but the call would just go straight to voicemail. When the police went to her apartment, they didn't find Heather there, and they also noticed that she didn't show up for work. The search for missing Heather Elvis was now underway. Friends and family created posters and leaflets and set up the Facebook page, Find Heather Elvis. Whilst police were looking for Heather and doing their investigations, suspicions soon quickly fell on Sydney and Tammy Moorer due to the evidence of the texts, phone calls, and public knowledge of the affair between Heather and Sydney. Sydney and Tammy would also post on Facebook about the situation and spoke very disrespectfully of Heather and her family. Sydney posted, "Heather was a girl who traded fellatio for pumpkin-spiced lattes, amongst other things." Tammy also posted messages including a lengthy status. "Well, Sydney cheated on me in the months of September-October with a psycho whore who has since gone missing." Evidence against Sydney kept piling up. The detectives noted his pickup leaving the Peachtree Landing area at 3:45 a.m. They searched it and found out that he had detached the GPS system on the night of December 18th, which hindered detectives from confirming that the car on CCTV had been his. With no concrete evidence, Sydney was let go whilst detectives continued the investigation. On February 21st, 2014, Sydney and Tammy Moorer were arrested and charged with kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and 2 charges of indecent exposure after an 11-hour search. They were charged with indecent exposure for taking sexually explicit pictures of themselves in public areas, as well as obstruction of justice for lying to police about the payphone. On February 24, 2014, police held a press conference and announced that they had been charged with Heather Elvis's murder. They claimed to have discovered evidence that led them to suspect Sydney and Tammy kidnapped and murdered Heather. Sydney and Tammy were released from prison after 11 months in 2015. Their bond was set at $100,000 per person. At the bond hearing, prosecutors stated that there was no direct link between them and Heather's disappearance. The Moorer family claimed they were threatened by the Elvis family, so they had a tracking system installed and were advised to avoid the Elvis family, including on social media. The murder charges were dismissed without prejudice in March 2016, which means they could charge them again with murder if they chose to. The kidnapping charges were also reduced to pending. They also dropped the charges of indecent exposure against both of them. On June 20th, 2016, Sydney's trial for the kidnapping of Heather Elvis began, and it was revealed in court that Heather was possibly pregnant. The detectives discovered that when Sydney went to Walmart, he purchased a pregnancy test and cigars. Afterward, Sydney then went to the payphone to call Heather and then to meet up with Heather. Sydney explained that the pregnancy test was for Tammy because they were trying for a child. Even though the Moorers' home security footage showed them washing their car after December 18th, burning rags, and also having a receipt for a pregnancy test in their possession, Sydney's kidnapping charge resulted in a mistrial after the jury was hung, which occurs when the jury is unable to reach an agreement. With no body and no evidence that Sydney murdered Heather, 10 of the jury members wanted to convict him, while 2 did not. In August of 2017, Sydney went to trial again, this time for the obstruction of justice charges, and was found guilty. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Meanwhile, the prosecution made plans to retry Sydney for kidnapping in the future. In October 2018, 5 years after Heather went missing, Tammy was put on trial for kidnapping and conspiracy. At the trial, it was revealed that Tammy was infuriated by her husband's affair with Heather, especially after rumors began to circulate that Heather was pregnant in December 2013. Moreover, a family friend of the Moorers, named Donald DeMarino, testified that he saw an image of Heather on Tammy's phone at a family cookout that was held after Heather went missing. Donald mentioned that in the image, it did not appear that Heather was able to walk or talk. He was allegedly so distressed by said image that he left the cookout after seeing it. The image in question was not shown, nor were any additional details given. However, this testimony and all the other evidence provided by the prosecution were enough to convince the jury to reach a guilty verdict in a little under 2 hours. She was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison on both counts, and she was eligible for parole after serving a specific amount of time. They have never disclosed what happened to Heather Elvis that night in December 2013, and they both have been trying to appeal their convictions for years, insisting they're innocent, yet to no avail. Today, 47-year-old Sydney is incarcerated at the maximum security Lee Correctional Institution in Bishopville with a projected release date of March 31, 2044, and 50-year-old Tammy is at the medium security Leith Correctional Institution in Greenwood with a projected release date of May 9, 2043. To this day, no trace of Heather Elvis has ever been found. A tribute garden has been set up at Peachtree Boat Landing in dedication to her. Heather's disappearance left an indelible void in the lives of her family and friends. The pain they endured, the questions left unanswered, and the yearning for closure became an enduring chapter in the story of Myrtle Beach. The Myrtle Beach community, bound by a shared hope for answers, rallied together in search efforts and vigils. The story of Heather resonated far beyond the coastal town, echoing the challenges of navigating the complexities of love and relationships. As we remember Heather Rochelle Elvis, may her memory be a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of compassion and understanding. In the tranquil suburbs of Melbourne, Australia, the abrupt end of a young woman's bright future unveiled a harrowing story that would shock the entire community. This is the story of Celeste Mano, a narrative of ambition, kindness, and an unexpected, tragic conclusion. Celeste, a vibrant and compassionate young woman, was celebrated for her infectious smile and generous heart. With a life brimming with promise, she aspired to make a significant, positive impact on the world. Yet, unbeknownst to many, a hidden danger loomed in the background. Celeste Mano entered the world on November 22, 1996, in the vibrant city of Melbourne, Australia. Her parents, Tony Mano and Aggie D. Mauro, welcomed her with open arms, alongside her older brother, Alessandro. From a young age, Celeste found joy in dancing and quickly became a cherished figure among her peers. Her bond with her mother, Aggie, was particularly strong, so much so that even as a 23-year-old, Celeste still found comfort in her mother's nightly tucks into bed. By June 2019, Celeste had established herself as a capable leader in a call center, diligently rising to the position of team leader. However, one fateful day at work, she found herself in the unexpected role of escorting a recently dismissed colleague out of the building, a task she hadn't foreseen. Celeste had no prior acquaintance with the dismissed colleague, yet she empathized with his situation. As they bid farewell, Celeste offered a gesture of goodwill, extending her hand for a handshake. However, before she could react, the man unexpectedly pulled her close and planted a kiss on her cheek. This encounter marked Celeste's first direct interaction with 35-year-old Louise Anna Turpin. The incident left Celeste feeling deeply embarrassed, prompting her to confide in her mother upon returning home that evening. Despite Celeste's discomfort, her mother dismissed the incident, attributing the man's actions to a harmless crush. Acknowledging her mother's wisdom and convinced it was merely a passing infatuation, Celeste chose to move past the uncomfortable encounter. With her focus on her blossoming relationship with Chris Risdale, a co-worker from the call center, she relegated the incident with Louise to the past. Yet shortly after Louise's termination, he unexpectedly reached out to Celeste through Instagram. "I can't stop thinking about you," he wrote. "I can't get your eyes and gorgeous smile out of my head." Feeling unsettled, Celeste sought comfort in her mother's counsel once more. However, from that moment forward, Louise's obsession with Celeste escalated rapidly as he inundated her with increasingly intimate messages. "I've never felt this way about anyone in my entire life. I'm totally infatuated with you, captivated and fascinated by you. I'd give my life and the world to you, just to be with you. In a polite message, Celeste conveyed to Louis that she didn't share his feelings and requested him to refrain from contacting her further, as his advances made her uncomfortable. However, it appeared that her rejection only served to intensify his pursuit. She wrote, "Stop contacting me as this is making me very uncomfortable. Please respect my wishes and stop." Despite Celeste's repeated requests for Louis to cease contacting her, his messages persisted incessantly. Over time, they took on a more aggressive and hostile tone. In one message he wrote, "I love you with all my heart, so forgive me when I say this, but you're lame." Despite Celeste's efforts to block Louis's accounts, he persisted by creating new profiles to continue harassing her. The relentless stalking took its toll, prompting Celeste to abandon pleading with him and instead opt to ignore his messages. However, this only seemed to exacerbate Louis's desperation. In a lengthy message, he expressed his anger, accusing Celeste of being no different from other women and vowing to prove his worth to the world. He declared an end to their communication, but regrettably, he failed to uphold this promise. Chris, Celeste's boyfriend, opened up about the anguish he felt witnessing the toll of the harassment on Celeste. She lived in constant fear, unable to eat or sleep as the relentless stalking persisted. Concerns escalated when Celeste's mother, Aggie, voiced worries about the possibility of the stalker discovering their home address. Celeste, however, brushed off her mother's concerns, believing that the harassment would cease once the stalker realized her lack of interest. Sadly, this optimism was short-lived, offering only a glimpse into the impending horror yet to unfold. After enduring 6 months of relentless harassment, Celeste and Aggie reached a breaking point. They made the difficult decision to visit their local police station to file a report. However, their hopes were dashed when the police informed them that Louis's actions did not constitute a crime, leaving them feeling helpless. The officer they spoke to advised Celeste to simply ignore him, prompting her to explain that she had already been doing so to no avail. In response, the officer said, "Well, that's just social media these days. If you don't like it, get off social media." The police's refusal to help left Celeste feeling increasingly powerless and exposed. Not only did they decline to take Louis's name, but they also did not assist whatsoever. Over the next 6 months, the situation deteriorated significantly. Louise Sacco escalated his harassment by appearing outside Celeste's workplace, followed by stalking her and even discovering her home address by trailing her one evening after work. His messages on Instagram turned from intrusive to sexually explicit, amplifying Celeste's sense of fear and vulnerability. "Have you ever had a beast pounce on you, Celeste?" he wrote. "I want some fun." "Celeste, if you had my body for a day, what would you do with me? A single girl like yourself is bound to be switching from one cock to another. Probably because deep down you know you're kinky. Hence, this makes you a slut." Louise Sacco's fixation had taken a disturbing turn, with his messages now vividly depicting explicit and vulgar fantasies involving Celeste. This alarming escalation left Celeste and her loved ones deeply concerned about Louis's intentions. Determined to address the growing threat, Celeste and Aggie returned to the police once more. This time, they encountered a more receptive officer who listened attentively to Celeste's account. Taking decisive action, the officer collected a comprehensive statement from Celeste and recorded all pertinent details about Louise Sacco. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, he advised Celeste to seek an intervention order without delay to protect herself from further harm. Following legal proceedings, Louis found himself served with a personal safety intervention order, effectively barring him from contacting Celeste. Any breach of this order would result in his immediate arrest. Despite this legal intervention, Aggie remained unconvinced of her daughter's safety and issued a solemn warning to Celeste. "This is just a piece of paper, sweetie. Let's remember that." For a month, it appeared that the intervention order had effectively halted Louis's harassment. However, Celeste's respite was short-lived when a 3-page letter from Louis suddenly appeared in her Instagram inbox. In the letter, Louis pleaded with Celeste to cease what he perceived as her interference in his life, despite the clear legal boundaries established by the intervention order. "Please see reason, Celeste. Please, Celeste. The ball is in your court." There's a desperation in my voice because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that my life is fast derailing and steering off track. Everything that I've worked for and improved on suddenly seems to be fading away. But there's still time to undo this, Celeste. Please undo this." These were just some of Louise's pleas and grievances in the letter. Continuing in the same vein, Louise shifted the blame onto Celeste for the predicament he found himself in, absolving himself of any responsibility for his actions. He implored Celeste to end what he termed as nonsense by retracting the intervention order and dropping the stalking and harassment charges against him. He painted a picture of a potential future where both of them could find peace if Celeste made the right choice to acquiesce to his demands. Despite Louise's breach of the intervention order, Celeste promptly alerted the authorities, leading to Louise's arrest. This moment brought a sense of relief to both Aggie and Celeste, who believed that their nightmare ordeal had finally reached its conclusion. However, their relief was short-lived, as Louise's next move involved acquiring a weapon. Meanwhile, with the immediate threat seemingly addressed, Celeste began to embrace a newfound sense of freedom. For the first time in a year, she felt carefree, no longer burdened by the constant fear of looking over her shoulder. Celeste and her boyfriend, Christopher, shared a delightful date at a charming rooftop bar in the picturesque town of Fitzroy, Melbourne, a cherished memory for Christopher. Little did the couple know that this outing would be one of their last together. Their final photograph captured them radiating happiness on a sunlit day, and Celeste eagerly anticipated sharing the image on social media. Tragically, it was this very photo that would incite Louise Sacco to perpetrate his most atrocious act yet, an act that would abruptly end Celeste Mano's life, forever wrenching her from her grieving family. After being released from police custody, Louise resumed his sinister stalking of Celeste. He meticulously monitored her social media posts, scrutinizing her whereabouts, activities, and companions. He even resorted to surveilling her home, observing the windows to ascertain which room belonged to Celeste based on the activities within. On the fateful night of November 16, 2020, Celeste and Aggie found themselves alone at home. As bedtime approached, they exchanged loving goodnight wishes. Aggie's last memory of her daughter was at Celeste's bedroom door, where she asked if Celeste wanted her bedroom light on or off. Celeste opted to leave it on, reassuring her mother that she would handle it later. "Okay, love you," Aggie expressed before closing the bedroom door. "Love you more," Celeste replied, sealing the tender moment between mother and daughter. In the early hours, just before 4 a.m., the tranquility of the night shattered as Louise Sacco, armed with a hammer and a large kitchen knife, forcefully smashed through Celeste's bedroom window, launching a brutal attack. The sound of splintering glass and tumultuous chaos jolted Aggie from her sleep, prompting her to sprint to her daughter's room, her heart pounding with terror. As Aggie entered the room, she was met with shards of glass underfoot and the chilling sight of blood staining the room. Frantically, she rushed to Celeste's side, her screams echoing in the night, pleading for answers as she tried to rouse her daughter. In her desperate attempts to pull Celeste from her bed, Aggie's heart sank as she realized her daughter lay lifeless, unmoving. Outside, security footage captured the chilling sight of Louise Sacco fleeing in his car, leaving behind a scene of devastation. Aggie fought desperately to save her daughter, her cries echoing through the house as she begged Celeste not to leave her. Tragically, despite her valiant efforts, it was too late. Celeste Mano had been brutally taken from her, leaving Aggie to grapple with the unimaginable grief of losing her beloved daughter. Emergency services swiftly descended upon the residence, and the police wasted no time in cordoning off the area, designating it a crime scene. As officers informed Aggie of the grim reality, revealing the discovery of a knife in Celeste's bedroom where the tragic incident occurred, Aggie's distress reached a fever pitch. In a moment of anguish, she cried out, "Oh my God, he killed her!" sending shockwaves through the attending officers. Aggie's assertion of knowing her daughter's assailant stunned the officers, who promptly noted down Louise Sacco's name. Subsequent forensic examination, detailed in the autopsy report, revealed the horrifying extent of Celeste Mano's injuries, a frenzied attack that left her with 23 stab wounds, with a fatal strike piercing her heart. Helpless in her slumber, Celeste stood no chance against the brutality of Louise Sacco. Yet tragically, his heinous act was far from over. Louis's subsequent actions underscored the calculated nature of Celeste's murder. He drove straight to the police station, seemingly intent on turning himself in. However, upon arrival, he began imploring officers to shoot him and shifted the blame onto law enforcement for Celeste's death. It became evident that Louise was attempting to evade conventional imprisonment by pleading mental impairment. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Aggie delved into the intricacies of the legal system, arming herself with knowledge to confront the impending legal battle. However, as she delved deeper into the workings of the justice system, her initial shock turned to seething anger. Over the next 3 arduous years, the case traversed the corridors of the court, each step a painful reminder of Celeste's tragic fate. Finally, after a protracted legal battle, Louise Sacco relented and pleaded guilty to the murder of Celeste. However, this admission came only after his attempts to convince psychiatrists of his supposed mental illness fell short. In the courtroom, Louise Sacco was compelled to confront a haunting symbol of his heinous act, a glowing orb crafted from the ashes of his victim, Celeste. As he faced his sentencing, Aggie's impassioned cries pierced the air, demanding that he acknowledge the devastation he had wrought. Despite her pleas, Louis, by then 39 years old, attempted to avert his gaze from the luminous reminder of his crime, placed prominently beside Aggie as she recounted her daughter's life to the court. The outcome of the sentencing delivered yet another blow to Celeste's grieving family. Aggie, in particular, was devastated to learn that her daughter's murderer would spend at least 30 years behind bars. Throughout the proceedings, Louise Sacco remained stoic, displaying no hint of emotion or remorse for his actions. Speaking outside the Victorian Supreme Court, Aggie, flanked by Celeste's father and brother, voiced her profound disappointment with Victoria's authorities. "We were forced to trust a system we lost faith in 3 years ago," she stated. "It failed Celeste then, and it has failed her again now." Aggie highlighted the unfulfilled promises of law reform on stalking that were made following Celeste's death. "I've had 3.5 years of endless meetings," she said. "When these officials met with me, they made promises and commitments, vowing to begin with the Victorian Law Reform Commission's report on stalking laws. The VLRC report was tabled well over a year ago. I waited and waited until I could wait no longer. I eventually realized the door was shut. Many promises were made, but none were honored. Celeste's tragic end created an irreplaceable void in the lives of her family and friends, whose grief underscores the vibrant life that was unjustly taken from them. Their love and cherished memories sustain her spirit amidst their profound sorrow." In the wake of this tragedy, the community united to honor Celeste's memory, advocating for change and offering support to victims of stalking and violence. This collective action highlights the power of unity during times of crisis. Celeste Mano's story stands as a somber reminder of the need for vigilance, systemic reform, and the enduring strength of a community bonded by grief and determination. May her memory inspire us to work towards a safer world for everyone,